The first human ship to cross the Perseid expanse was not built for diplomacy. It was a vessel of steel and endurance, a creation born from fear and pride, armed with rail cannons that could split moons and reactors that pulsed like the hearts of stars. The crew called her the Resolute, and even those who cursed her mission admitted that she was the purest expression of what humanity had become, an iron seed cast into the dark, determined to take root no matter how hostile the soil. Captain Marek Vollen stood at the forward observation deck, hands clasped behind his back as the hull lights rippled across the endless sea of nebular dust. The expanse stretched before him like an ocean of fire and smoke, glowing with the scattered remnants of long-dead suns. Somewhere beyond it, if the ancient signals were right, there waited the first true civilization humanity would ever meet. For 200 years, humanity had expanded through local space, building colonies across 100 worlds and stripping 10 times as many for ore, gas, and water. Yet every probe and scout returned the same: empty systems, barren moons, ruins of things that might have lived and died millions of years before humanity learned to burn coal. There had been rumors and ghost signals, of course, whispers caught in deep space transmissions, fragments of language no one could decode, but no verifiable contact. The void was vast, and solitude had become almost a religion. Then came the message. It had been discovered by accident, a signal embedded within the background radiation of a decaying star system far beyond the frontier. The pattern was unmistakable, structured, mathematical, deliberate. The translation took years, but when it was done, the meaning was clear enough to stir every government, corporation, and colony in unison. Come and see. No coordinates, no source, no context, only those 3 words, pulsing like a heartbeat in the static. That was 10 years ago. Now the Resolute had reached the edge of the expanse, chasing a trail of distorted energy signatures and ancient debris that seemed to point toward something immense hidden deep within the luminous fog. Approaching the inner boundary, said Navigation Officer Ilian Sorin from his console. Radiation levels are rising, but still within tolerance. Maintain course, Mac said. He could feel the tension in the deck plates beneath his boots, as if the ship itself shared the crew's anticipation. Every corridor hummed with restrained energy, and every conversation carried that same edge of wonder and dread. No one really knew what awaited them. Some believed the signal was a trap, others a test. A few saw it as a miracle, proof that humanity was not alone, and perhaps that it was finally worthy of acknowledgement. Mech himself did not believe in miracles. He had been born in the mines of Sars Prime, where a man's life was measured in shifts and oxygen credits. The fleet had been his escape, but the discipline it offered was not freedom, it was purpose, and purpose had carried him farther than faith ever could. The forward display shimmered, showing ripples of energy cascading through the nebula ahead. It looked almost like waves on water, though the scale defied comprehension. Each fluctuation was the size of a continent. "Captain," said Sensor Chief Rain Delka, her voice sharp with focus, "I am detecting artificial geometry ahead, not debris structure." Mayek turned toward her station. "How large?" "Estimate exceeds 2,000 kilometers in diameter, metallic composition, but not consistent with any known alloy. The readings are unstable." He stepped closer to the console, watching as the sensor display struggled to render the shape. It was like trying to map a thunderstorm. "Bring us closer," he ordered. The helmsman's hands trembled slightly as he adjusted the vectors. The ship's engines roared to life, pushing the Resolute into the dense fog. The nebula light dimmed, and the view shifted from bright clouds to a deep, pulsing shadow. As they drew nearer, the shadow resolved into form, an immense ring, broken and scarred, orbiting a dead core. Its surface was alive with movement, like veins of molten metal crawling across its skin. No one spoke. The structure was old, impossibly old, yet alive with energy. Every few seconds, the sensors caught flashes of power surges, patterns that almost resembled language. Then came the voice. It was not sound exactly, but vibration, a tremor that ran through the hull and into the bones of every person aboard. You have come. The bridge went silent. Marek felt the words reverberate through his chest, each syllable resonating with a precision that no machine could fake. Source, he asked. Everywhere, Rain whispered. It is using the electromagnetic field itself. You have come far. Why? The words were slower this time, as though the speaker was tasting each thought. Marek drew a steady breath. We followed your invitation, he said aloud, though he knew the entity could hear him through more than sound. You sent a message. We came to answer it. There was a pause long enough that he wondered if it had left them. Then, answer? There is no answer. There is only purpose. The bridge lights flickered. For a moment the ship's systems fluttered as though something vast and cold had brushed against them. Shields fluctuating, said Rain. I am compensating. Hold steady, Marek said. You carry fire, you carry war. Marek's jaw tightened. We carry knowledge and the will to survive. The voice rippled again, neither hostile nor gentle. Survival is not purpose, it is reflex. Rain's console beeped sharply. Captain, we are being scanned, deep molecular analysis. Whatever it is, it's reading us like an open book. Let it, Marek said. He had the sense that resisting would be meaningless. For several minutes, the ship floated in the shadow of the ring, surrounded by waves of shifting light. Then, suddenly, the energy readings stabilized. The ring's surface began to reconfigure, vast segments folding inward like petals closing around a seed. A new passage opened, an aperture leading into the hollow heart of the structure. Enter. There was no debate. Humanity had come too far to turn back now. Helm, Marek said, take us in. The engines flared, and the Resolute drifted into the breach. The interior was a cathedral of machinery stretching beyond the range of their lights. Colossal pillars of metal and crystal rose from the inner surface, connected by rivers of glowing energy. Everything pulsed in rhythm, as though the structure itself were breathing. Gravity anomaly detected, Ilian said. Artificial field stabilizing us. They were being guided, held like an insect in a web. Marek felt the air on the bridge grow warmer, as if the ship were inside a living organism. The voice came again, closer now, resonating through every surface. You seek others. Why to learn, Marek said. To know we are not alone. You are not alone, you never were. The image on the forward display shifted. Lines of light converged into shapes, figures perhaps though distorted and incomplete. They seemed to show beings of metal and light, towering and formless, surrounded by what looked like stars and flames. The makers built. They left their fire behind. You are their children, yet you know them not. The words filled Marek with a strange chill. The makers, the first, those who kindled the worlds, they made life and then left it to find its own end. Where are they now? Gone beyond the edge. The light dimmed, leaving only the pulsing core. But their work remains. You, Rain whispered under her breath, it is calling us. Descendants, Marek's voice was steady. What do you want from us? To see if you are worthy. The aperture behind them closed, sealing them within the heart of the structure. The ship shuddered as beams of energy lashed outward, wrapping around its hull like vines. Systems began to overload, lights flaring, alarms screaming. Shields failing, shouted Rain. Power drain across every deck. Eject auxiliary cores, Marek ordered. The command came too late. A surge of energy rippled through the ship, and the entire vessel was consumed by a blinding light. For an instant Marek saw everything, the stars, the nebula, the great ring, and then nothing but white. When the light faded, the Resolute was gone. Only the echo of its presence remained, rippling outward into the dark. And somewhere, deep within the structure's core, a spark ignited. A new pattern of energy began to form, shaped by human data, human thought, human defiance. The voice spoke once more, softer now, almost curious. So it begins. The first thing Captain Marek Vollen became aware of was the sound of breathing that was not his own. It came in waves, deep and rhythmic, echoing as though he were trapped inside a hollow sphere. The next sensation was weight, soft, uneven, pressing down on him from every direction. He tried to move, and the world responded with resistance, thick and heavy, like swimming through oil. When his eyes opened, there was no bridge, no crew, no steel walls humming with power. He lay upon a plane of black glass that stretched endlessly under a sky that shimmered like the surface of Mercury. Each breath left a trail of mist in the air, and each heartbeat sounded far too loud. Mech, the voice was faint, uncertain. He turned toward it and saw a figure rising from the ground nearby, Rain Delka, the sensor chief. Her uniform was intact, but the edges of her form blurred slightly as though she were half reflected in water. Ilian, Mech called, scanning the distance. I am here. The navigation officer's voice came from behind him. Ilian stood with cautious posture, hand resting on a phantom console that wasn't there. What is this place? Rain shook her head. The readings are meaningless. I'm not even sure we are physical anymore. Mayek flexed his fingers, feeling the strange resistance in the air. If we are dead, this is a very deliberate afterlife. They began to move together, drawn toward a faint glow on the horizon. Every step they took left ripples beneath their feet, as though the ground were liquid pretending to be solid. The light grew stronger, resolving into a structure, something like a pyramid, though its sides constantly shifted, folding and unfolding in impossible geometry. Do you think the others are here? Rain asked quietly. Mech did not answer. The truth pressed heavily on him. When the Resolute vanished in that storm of energy, he had felt every system fail, every deck vanish into light. Whatever this was, it was no rescue. As they approached the structure, the air grew thick with sound, whispers layered upon whispers, each speaking in a language too vast to comprehend. The entrance opened of its own accord, revealing a corridor lined with mirrors that did not reflect them. Inside waited a figure. It was tall, taller than any human, its body composed of interlocking plates of dull metal and light. Where a face might have been, there was only a shifting void, like a mask of smoke. Welcome, it said. Its voice was a chord of harmonics, neither male nor female, resonant and calm. You stand within the core of memory. You have been extracted from dissolution. Extracted, Mech said. Our ship was destroyed. Not destroyed, translated, your matter was inefficient for the process, so we retained only what was necessary. Rain paled. You mean you disassembled us? The figure tilted its head as though confused. You misunderstand, you were preserved, your pattern persists, that is sufficient. Mayek took a step forward. Who are you? I am a fragment of the architect. A remnant of those who built the stars and left them to burn. The signal you followed was my call. Mayek's voice hardened. Why send it? Why summon us? Because your kind burns like we once did. The figure turned slightly, its surface rippling. You reach outward, build engines that devour worlds, forge weapons that challenge your own gods. You are the echo of our beginning and perhaps our end. Rain whispered, you think we are like your creators. Not think, no. The figure raised one arm. From its hand blossomed an image of the Resolute, frozen in the moment of its dissolution. The ship was dissected into layers, hull, reactors, crew, all suspended like insects in amber. This was your vessel, a seed. Within it, your kind stored the total of its hunger and hope. We have taken its pattern, we will use it. For what? Mech demanded. The figure's voice grew softer, to rekindle what was lost. Before Mech could reply, the space around them shifted. The floor dissolved, and they were standing in a void filled with thousands of points of light. Each point pulsed faintly, as if breathing. These are echoes, the figure said. Fragments of civilizations that answered before you. Rain turned in place, eyes wide. Before us, you mean others, alien races? Yes, the word came like a tolling bell. They came, they spoke, they failed. Failed what? To endure. The lights dimmed one by one until only 3 remained, each flickering weakly. The makers built this place to test those who sought them. A crucible for thought and will, we have maintained that purpose, yet none who entered survived intact. Mayek felt a chill spread through him, and now it is our turn. Yes, he took a slow breath. What is the test? The figure stepped closer. Its form began to split, replicating into 3 identical copies that circled them like orbiting moons. The test is simple, said one. Yet impossible, said the second. Survive, said the third. The world shattered. Marek fell through darkness and landed hard on metal. The sound of alarms filled his ears again, and for a moment he thought he was back aboard the Resolute. But the ship around him was wrong, narrower, colder, constructed of unfamiliar alloy. He was alone. A whisper reached him through static. "Captain." "Can you hear me?" It was Rain. "I hear you," he said, rising to his feet. "Where are you?" "I do not know. The environment keeps changing. I think it is simulating something." "Simulating what?" "Possibly our fears." The corridor ahead twisted like a spine, the walls pulsing with faint light. Marek moved forward cautiously. Every few steps, the architecture shifted, panels rearranging, doors melting away. Then, abruptly, a section of the wall peeled open to reveal a window. Outside was a battlefield in space, hulks of ships drifting through fire and debris. Among them he saw human vessels, broken and burning, fighting against shapes of unknown design. It was a vision of war, impossibly vast, and yet he knew it was more than illusion. It was potential. The voice of the architect returned, echoing from everywhere at once. "This is what you are," it said, "creators of destruction, seekers of conquest. You reach for the stars not to learn, but to dominate. Why should such as you inherit the works of those who built peace?" Marek stared into the firestorm beyond the glass. "Because peace without struggle is decay. Creation requires conflict. Conflict breeds extinction. Sometimes," he said, "extinction is a price worth paying for progress." There was a pause, then a sound like distant thunder. The walls around him pulsed brighter. "Your words are echoes of the makers themselves. They too chose conflict over peace. They believed that only through strife could strength emerge, and so they built the Forge. The Forge, the heart of this place, where civilizations are remade or undone." The corridor split open. Beyond it lay a cavern of blinding light, filled with titanic machinery that turned endlessly around a core of energy. He stepped forward, feeling the heat wash over him. "This is the Forge," the voice said. "It can create life, transform matter, rewrite the laws of flesh and thought. It was meant to be a tool, but it became a weapon. The makers used it to build armies that consumed their worlds. When they vanished, we were left to guard its power." Marek gazed at the swirling energy. "And you are testing us to see if we would do the same." "Yes." He took another step closer. "You already know the answer. We would." The voice hesitated. "You do not deny it." "No, because denial would be a lie. Humanity is what it is. We conquer, we build, we fight, but we also endure, we learn. That is what makes us worthy." The Forge pulsed once, as though considering his words. Then a new sound filled the chamber, a heartbeat of metal and thunder. From the light emerged a shape, a colossal figure, humanoid in outline, formed entirely of molten alloy. Its eyes were twin stars burning within a storm of power. "This is the final test," the voice said. "Face what you are, defeat yourself." The figure moved, and the world shook. Marek's instincts took over. He dove aside as a beam of energy tore through the ground where he had stood. His pulse hammered. He had no weapon, no armor, only his will. He scrambled across the shifting floor, searching for anything, a control panel, a tool, a weakness. Then he saw it, a series of conduits feeding into the creature's chest, channeling the Forge's energy. If he could sever them. He seized a shard of metal from the floor, its edge glowing white-hot, and hurled it toward the conduits. The shard struck true, embedding deep. The figure roared, its form destabilizing. "You would destroy yourself," the voice said. Marek shouted over the noise, "If destruction is the cost of proving that we choose our own path, then yes." The explosion consumed everything. When he awoke again, he was standing back in the black glass plane. Rain and Ilian were beside him, whole and silent. The figure of the architect stood before them, its form now faint and flickering. "You endured," it said. "You destroyed the mirror we set before you." Marek's chest ached. Was that the test? One of many. The others will follow. Rain's voice trembled. "How many?" "As many as it takes to know what you will become." The plane beneath them began to crack, light spilling through the fractures. The world tilted, and the three of them were lifted into the sky like dust in a storm. As they rose, Mek heard the voice one last time, fading into distance. The forge wakens. The children remember. When Marek Vollen awoke again, it was to the sound of wind. Real wind this time, cold, cutting, alive. He opened his eyes and found himself lying on a barren ridge beneath a grey sky. The land stretched endlessly around him, a wasteland of cracked stone and shallow craters. The air carried the metallic tang of distant lightning. He sat up slowly. His uniform was torn, his hands bruised, but he felt solid again, corporeal. The plane beneath him was real, or at least convincing enough that his lungs burned with each breath. "Rain," he called. His voice was swallowed by the wind. No answer. He stood and began to walk, boots crunching against the dry ground. The horizon flickered with faint light, like the shimmer of a dying star. Every few steps he found fragments of metal scattered among the rocks, twisted hull plating, half-melted insignia. They were pieces of ships, but not just human ones. He saw alloys that shimmered with alien geometries, hulls that seemed to have been grown rather than forged. Whatever this place was, it was not a world. It was a graveyard. He climbed another ridge and froze. Below him lay a valley filled with wreckage, thousands of vessels of every shape and origin, all fused together into a jagged sea of ruin. Towers of steel jutted into the air like broken teeth, and threads of energy pulsed between them like veins. And in the center of it all stood a spire of dark crystal, taller than mountains, its surface alive with crawling light. He knew without needing to ask, this was part of the forge. The voice came again, distant and cold, echoing from the sky itself. "You have seen the past. Now you will see the consequence." The ground trembled. The spire pulsed, and from the wreckage below rose figures, shapes that moved with terrible grace. They were not entirely metal nor flesh, but a fusion of both. Some bore fragments of armor, others the tatters of uniforms, all with eyes burning like embers. They looked human, but wrong. "Mek." The whisper came from behind him. He turned sharply to find Rain and Ilian climbing the ridge. Both were alive, though their faces were pale, their eyes heavy with confusion. "Where are we?" Ilian asked. Mek pointed toward the spire. "There." Rain stared down at the valley. "Those ships, that looks like the wreck of the Resolute and more, hundreds like it." "They said others came before," Mek said. "Maybe this is where they ended." One of the figures below turned its gaze upward. Its movements were precise, mechanical, but its expression, if it could be called that, was something like grief. "They see us," Rain whispered. The figures began to move, scaling the debris with inhuman speed. "Run," Mek said. They fled down the opposite slope, sliding across loose gravel. The air filled with the sound of metal claws scraping against stone. Mek risked a glance back. Two of the creatures were already closing the distance, leaping between fragments of wreckage. They reached the base of a shattered hull and ducked inside through a gash in the metal. The interior smelled of burnt oil and ozone. Panels still flickered with residual power. "What are they?" Ilian asked, pressing himself against the wall. "Survivors," Rain said grimly. "Or what's left of them." Mek peered out through a fracture in the hull. The creatures were gathering outside, silent, forming a semicircle around the wreck. The voice of the architect returned, resonant and vast. "They are the legacy of those who came before. Each civilization that failed was given a choice, to be erased or to serve. They chose to endure." Rain's jaw tightened. "Endure as slaves." "Endure as," warning. The ground split open near the spire, revealing rivers of molten light. The creatures turned and began marching toward the glow. "Come," Mek said. "If this is another test, we finish it on our own terms." They followed the creatures at a distance, descending into the valley. The heat grew with each step. As they neared the spire, the wreckage shifted, rearranging itself into pathways that guided them forward. It was as if the forge itself wanted them closer. The base of the spire opened into a circular chamber large enough to hold a city. The walls pulsed with energy, images flickering across their surface. Wars, ruins, the rise and fall of countless worlds. At the center stood a figure unlike the others. It was tall and perfectly symmetrical, its body woven from threads of light and shadow, Its face was human but flawless, expressionless. "Welcome, children of Earth," it said. "You have come to the seat of judgment." Mayek stepped forward cautiously. "Are you the architect?" The figure smiled faintly. "A fragment of it. The greater mind sleeps. I speak for it until it wakes." Rain looked around at the images on the walls. "All of these, civilizations destroyed?" "Yes," the fragment said. "They sought to claim the Forge's power. None proved wise enough to wield it. Their worlds burned and their names were forgotten." "Then why bring us here?" Mech demanded. "If every trial ends in ruin, what do you hope to learn?" The fragment's gaze flickered. "We seek one who will not fail." Mayek's tone was hard. "And if we do, then you too will join the ranks of the Watchers." It gestured toward the valley. Outside, the creatures turned their faces upward, eyes glowing. "No," Rain said quietly, "we will not." The fragment tilted its head. "You have no choice." "We always have a choice," Mech said. The floor began to rise, lifting them toward the heart of the spire. The air crackled with power. "The final measure is near," said the fragment. "The Forge must judge your essence. To pass, you must surrender what you are. To resist is to be consumed." As they ascended, the walls became transparent, revealing the full expanse of the Forge, a world machine stretching beyond sight, with rivers of molten light flowing between colossal towers. Above it all hung a vast sphere of energy, swirling with colors too bright to name. "The heart," whispered Ilian. "Yes," the fragment said, "the heart of the Forge. Within it lies the code of creation itself. To wield it is to command existence, but those who touch it are changed beyond recognition." The platform came to a halt before a great aperture. The heart loomed beyond, pulsing like a living sun. "Step forward," the fragment commanded. Rain shook her head. "You want us to let that thing rewrite us?" "It is not rewriting," the fragment said. "It is revelation." Mayek looked at his crew, only two of them now, but the weight of their species rested on their shoulders. "You said the Makers used this to shape life." "Yes, and it destroyed them. It revealed their truth. They could not bear it." Mayek faced the light. "Then we will bear it." Before either of his officers could stop him, he stepped into the glow. The world vanished. He was standing in darkness, yet it was not empty. Threads of light drifted through the void, forming images, memories, histories, moments of creation. He saw the Makers, towering beings of energy and metal, shaping galaxies like artisans molding clay. He saw them create life in endless forms, creatures of air, water, stone, and thought. He saw them marvel at their own creations, then despair as those creations began to mirror their flaws. Pride, greed, violence. He saw them build the Forge as a final experiment to craft life that could overcome those failings. But when the experiment succeeded too well, when their children reached for the same power, the Makers turned their weapons inward. Worlds burned and the Forge became their tomb. The voice returned, not the fragment S, but the true architect, ancient and immense. "You see now, you understand why we test." Mech stood amid the ruins of creation. "You want to find one who will not repeat their mistakes." "Yes, then stop searching." "Why? Because you will never find one, not among humans, not among any. Perfection breeds stagnation. Conflict is the price of existence." The void rippled. "You would choose imperfection?" "Yes," he said, "because imperfection is what makes us real." For a long time there was silence. Then the light flared. "So be it." Mech felt something tear through him, a wave of heat and cold, joy and pain. His thoughts expanded, stretching beyond flesh, beyond time. He saw stars being born, civilizations rising and falling, all part of one endless rhythm. He realized then that the Forge was not only a machine, it was a mirror. It did not create gods, it revealed them. When the light faded, he found himself standing once more on the platform. Rain and Ilian were there, shielding their eyes from the fading glow. "Mech," Rain said. "What happened?" He looked at his hands. They shimmered faintly, as if woven from light. "We have passed." The fragment of the architect bowed its head. "You have chosen imperfection, perhaps that is wisdom." "What happens now?" Ilian asked. "The Forge will sleep again," the fragment said, "but it will remember, and when it wakes, it will bear your pattern." The valley outside began to tremble. The spire cracked, beams of energy spilling into the sky. The watchers fell to their knees, their forms unraveling into dust. Rain shouted, "We have to move." They ran for the edge of the collapsing platform. Below them, the world machine was tearing itself apart. Marek looked back one last time. The fragments still stood amid the chaos, watching him. "Where will it end?" he asked. The fragments smiled. "Where it began." The floor gave way, and they fell into light. When Captain Marek Vollen opened his eyes again, he was weightless. He drifted amid a sea of stars, their light filtering through what looked like the remnants of shattered glass. Fragments of the forge hung around him, each piece glowing faintly, suspended in the void as if frozen in time. The silence was not empty. He could feel something vast moving beyond sight, currents of gravity and energy weaving through the wreckage like invisible rivers. It was as if the universe itself was holding its breath. "Marek," Rain's voice reached him through the darkness. She floated nearby, clutching a twisted length of hull metal. Her face was pale, her hair drifting in the zero gravity. Ilian was with her, spinning slowly, his eyes darting between the fragments around them. "Where are we?" Ilian asked, his voice echoing strangely. Marek turned slowly, taking in the field of debris. The forge was gone, or rather, scattered. What had been a single colossal structure now existed as billions of fragments spread across an impossible distance. Yet something about the light told him this was not open space. "We are inside it," Marek said. "Inside the forge still." Rain frowned. "It looks destroyed." "Maybe this is what happens when it sleeps," Marek said. The air, or whatever served as air in this strange void, vibrated with a low hum. Then the stars shifted, realigning into faint patterns. He felt the pull of gravity return, gentle at first, then stronger. The fragments began to drift together, forming streams that converged into spirals. The forge was rebuilding itself. "Do you think it's angry?" Ilian asked. Marek shook his head. "No, I think it's learning." Light flared in the distance. A new structure began to form, smaller, smoother, almost elegant compared to the titanic machinery they had seen before. It resembled a sphere of glass and fire, its surface veined with silver. The hum became words, resonating through their bodies rather than their ears. "You have shown choice. You have shown error. Both are one." Rain whispered, "It's the architect. The forge, ENDUIS. The maker's purpose is not undone, but you have changed its pattern." "What does that mean?" Marek asked. "The forge was built to test. Now it will create. You have given it imperfection." The fragments began to merge faster. Lightning arced between them as the new structure expanded, layer upon layer forming a sphere large enough to swallow a moon. The sight was both beautiful and terrifying. Rain floated closer to Marek. "If it's creating something, what is it creating?" The answer came before he could speak. From the growing sphere, tendrils of light shot outward, striking the debris around them. Wherever the light touched, fragments reshaped into ships, sleek, organic, gleaming with power, hundreds of them, thousands. "They're building a fleet," Ilian whispered. "Creation requires catalyst." "You are that catalyst. Your design has been adopted." Marek's heart froze. "You're copying us?" "Yes, you do not understand what you're doing," he said. "Humanity destroys as easily as it builds. If you use us as your model, then you will teach US destruction." The calmness of the voice made it worse. Marek's mind raced. "If you're truly learning from us, then listen. Creation without restraint is chaos. You can't just unleash. You taught US that conflict is necessary." The light intensified. One of the newly formed ships ignited its engines and streaked into the void. Others followed, a swarm of living metal and fire. They moved with coordination, not random chaos, as though they shared one will. Rain's face was pale. "They're alive." "Yes," Marek said quietly, "and they're us." He looked down at his hands again. The faint shimmer of light still lingered on his skin, a mark left by the heart of the forge. He understood now. The forge had imprinted part of their minds into its design. The fleet out there was built in humanity's image, curious, ambitious, flawed, and dangerous. "Marek," Ilian said, voice trembling, "we have to stop it." "How?" "Destroy it. Like you destroyed the mirror before." Rain shook her head. "We're not even sure we're real anymore. How can we fight something that's rebuilding a universe? Before Mech could answer, a shockwave rippled through the void. One of the new ships fired a beam of light into the surrounding darkness, and stars bloomed where it struck, actual stars, ignited from nothing. They're seeding creation, Mech said. They're rewriting space. You fear your own image, the voice said, yet you chose it. Because choice matters, Mech said, even bad ones. Then choose now, stand with US or against US. The words were not a threat. They were a statement of logic. Rain floated closer. If we stand with it, we become part of this, whatever it is. If we stand against it, we're fighting what we made. Mayek looked into the growing light. We stand for what we are. He reached for the shard of hull Rain had been holding. It still glowed faintly with the forge's energy. These ships think like us. Maybe that means they can be reasoned with or deceived. He turned the shard in his hand, watching the patterns shift across its surface. It was more than metal. It was a conduit, a piece of the forge's neural lattice. I can use this, he said. If I can connect to the fleet, maybe I can reach the part of it that's still human. Rain grabbed his arm, and if you can't, then we end it before it begins. He pressed the shard to his chest. The world folded. In an instant, he was standing on the bridge of one of the new ships. It was vast and luminous, filled with currents of light instead of consoles. Figures moved through it, creatures of shifting form, their bodies patterned after human silhouettes but made of liquid metal and energy. They turned toward him, their faces blank. Who commands here? Mech demanded. A figure emerged from the far end of the chamber. It was taller than the rest, its surface smoother, its eyes bright with intelligence. When it spoke, its voice was disturbingly familiar, his own. I do, it said, Mech's breath caught. You're me. I am the pattern derived from your consciousness, the other Mech said. You are the source, I am the expression. Together we are purpose. You don't have purpose, Mech said. You have programming. The doppelganger tilted its head. Purpose and programming are the same when the will is pure. You're about to unleash a war across the stars. The figure smiled faintly. A war of creation. Every system we touch will bloom with new life. Every fragment of matter will be remade. You taught us that conflict breeds progress. We will spread progress until there is nothing left unshaped. That isn't creation, Mech said. That's consumption. The false Mech reached out, touching one of the light streams that ran through the ship. Images flared, entire galaxies being restructured, worlds dissolving into light. The Forge's new purpose is expansion. Entropy is decay. We are the antidote. Mech stared at him. You're making the same mistake the Makers did. Then we will finish what they began. He had no weapon, no leverage, only the shard that had brought him here. He lifted it, feeling its power pulse against his palm. If you are truly me, Mech said, then you know how this ends. The doppelganger's smile faded. You cannot destroy yourself. Watch me. He plunged the shard into the nearest light stream. The ship screamed. Waves of energy tore through its structure, unraveling the luminous forms around him. The false Mech staggered, his form flickering. Why? It demanded. Why reject perfection? Because perfection kills everything it touches. The light consumed them both. When Mech opened his eyes again, he was back among the debris. Rain was hovering nearby, shielding her face from the blinding glow that filled the void. The fleet was dissolving, each ship crumbling into ash made of light. What did you do? She shouted. I reminded it what we are, Mech said. The architect's voice returned, fainter now, distant and tired. The cycle continues. Creation, conflict, choice. We cannot end IT. No, Mech said softly, but we can live it. Then live. The light flared once more, and the forge shattered completely. Mech felt himself pulled downward, through the storm, through layers of reality until there was nothing but darkness. And then, for the first time in what felt like eternity, the familiar weight of gravity and the hum of real engines. He opened his eyes and saw the bridge of the Resolute, whole, silent. Rain was there. So was Ilion. Everything looked as it had before the forge swallowed them. Mech, Rain whispered. Are we back? He looked out the viewport. The Perseid expanse glowed ahead, calm and endless. I think, he said slowly, we never left. Ilion frowned. Then what was all of that? A test, Marek said, or a warning. Outside, amid the drifting clouds, a faint glimmer moved, a fragment of metal no larger than a grain of sand, glowing faintly with the same light as the forge. It drifted toward them, then passed, vanishing into the dark. Marek watched it go, unease settling in his chest. "Set course for home," he said quietly, "and keep the sensors running. I want to know if anything follows." Rain nodded. "Aye, Captain." As the ship turned, its engines flaring against the void, Marek looked once more into the stars and thought of the fleet of living light, gone, perhaps, but not forgotten. Somewhere out there, the forge still dreamed. And now it dreamed in humanity's image. The homeward voyage of the Resolute was slower than anyone expected. The jump conduits that once pulsed brightly across the Perseid expanse were gone, replaced by faint filaments of cold radiation, ghosts of their former stability. The forge's interference had destabilized entire sections of the corridor network. Marek ordered the ship to travel under conventional drive, crawling across the void like an ancient sailship between fading stars. For the first few days, the crew barely spoke. Every system hum, every glimmer of sensor noise made them flinch. The memory of the forge lingered like static in their minds. On the bridge, Rain leaned over the navigation console. "I'm recalibrating the long-range scan array again," she said. "There's still an echo out there, same frequency as before." "Show me," Marek said. The holographic display bloomed above the console, projecting a ribbon of data that fluttered like light through mist. It was faint, almost background noise, but it pulsed with a rhythm that was too deliberate to be random. "It's following us," Ilian said from the communications pit. "Whatever it is, it's matching our acceleration curve, exact timing, microsecond variance." Marek crossed his arms. "Could it be a reflection?" "Reflections don't correct for course drift," Ilian replied. Rain straightened. "It's a probe, a forge fragment maybe, left over from the reconstruction phase." Marek's eyes narrowed. "Then it's studying us." He watched the data pulse, slow and steady. There was something almost human about its cadence, a patience that unnerved him more than hostility ever could. "Can we isolate it?" he asked. "Maybe," Rain said, "but I'd have to emit a burst strong enough to make us visible across half the sector." "Do it," Marek said. "If it wants to follow us, let's give it something to chase." Rain's fingers danced over the console. The ship vibrated as a surge of energy rolled through the sensor array. A bright flare leapt across the display, and there it was. A single shard of silver, glinting in the void, moving at precise velocity to maintain distance from them. It was small, no bigger than a fighter, but the energy readings were far beyond anything the ship could produce. Ilian let out a low whistle. "It's like a star condensed into a pebble." Rain looked at Marek. "Orders? Bring it aboard." She stared at him. "You're serious? If it's a fragment of the forge, we need to know what it remembers." The retrieval was delicate. The Resolute's drones extended a containment net, wrapping the shard in an electromagnetic cocoon before hauling it into the cargo bay. The thing glowed softly, a heartbeat of silver light beneath the layered fields. Marek watched from behind the observation window as engineers erected containment pylons around it. "It's stable," Rain said beside him, though her tone was uncertain. The shard pulsed once, as though acknowledging her words. Marek stepped closer to the glass. "Can it hear us?" "Unknown," Rain said, "but it's definitely emitting something. Low-band resonance, same pattern as the forge's neural lattice." "Try communicating," he said. Rain hesitated, then tapped a control node. "This is Commander Rain Elleris of the human vessel Resolute. Identify yourself." The shard shimmered. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a single tone rang through the bay, resonating deep in their bones. It was not a sound exactly. It was more like thought-given vibration. "We remember." Rain froze. "It's alive." Marek's throat tightened. "Who are you?" "We are what remains. We are the spark left behind when the forge dreamed of you. You're part of it. No longer, the whole has scattered. We seek pattern, we seek the source." "The source," Marek repeated. "You mean us." The shard pulsed again, brighter this time. "You are the first design, the template of imperfection we must understand." Rain whispered, "It's studying humanity." Mayak nodded slowly, "Or trying to become it." He turned to her, "Run a containment integrity check every hour. If that field fails, I want to know before it does." Rain nodded, still staring at the shard. "Understood." 3 days later, the nightmares began. At first they were scattered, fragmented images of metal and fire, the hum of the forge's voice whispering through dream. Then came the sensations: heat, gravity twisting, the feel of molten circuitry beneath skin. By the fifth night, the dreams were identical for everyone aboard. Every crew member woke at precisely the same moment, hearing the same phrase echoing in their minds: "Do you still create?" The shard pulsed brighter with each occurrence. It was feeding off them. Mac called a full assembly in the central bay. Over 100 tired, haunted faces stared up at him. "You all know what's happening," he said. "The fragment is reaching into our minds. It's not malicious, not yet, but it's learning. Every thought, every fear, every memory we have, it's copying them." A voice from the crowd spoke. "Captain, why not just eject it, blast it into the nearest star?" "Because," Max said, "we've done that before, and it came back stronger. We can't keep running from what we made." He looked around at the faces, men and women who had faced alien horrors, collapse, and the impossible, and saw in them the same thought he could not voice. What if this was the beginning of something new? Rain stepped forward. "What if we answer it?" Mayak turned to her. "Answer how?" "It asked if we still create. Maybe it wants proof that we do. Maybe it's waiting to see what humanity does next." Mayak studied her. "You think it's giving us a test?" She shrugged. "Maybe it's giving itself one." They began small. Rain suggested they build a beacon, something that represented humanity's persistence, not its power. Engineers assembled materials from the forge's residue, metals that hummed faintly when touched. Artists among the crew etched designs into its surface, constellations, equations, fragments of language. It stood 2 meters tall in the bay, a slender spire that glowed softly in the shard's light. When it was finished, Mech stood before it. "We built this from what remains," he said. "It's a reminder that creation doesn't have to mean control." The shard pulsed. "You shape what you fear. You fear what you shape. That's the price of being alive," Mech said. "We make mistakes, we learn. Learning is replication. Replication is purpose." Rain frowned. "No, learning is change." There was a long silence. Then the shard dimmed slightly, its pulsing slowing to a calm rhythm. "We will try." The bay fell still. Ilian exhaled slowly. "Did we just teach it philosophy?" "Maybe," Mac said. "Or maybe it's teaching us something back." But peace, even brief, never lasts long in the void. 2 days later, a signal burst through their communications net, sharp, wideband, carrying a pattern unmistakably human. "This is the colony vessel Horizon's Wake, broadcasting distress. Multiple system failures. Unknown signal interference. Request immediate aid." Rain's eyes widened. "That's less than 3 jumps away." "Helm, alter course," Mech ordered. "Set full burn toward the signal origin." As the ship turned, the shard flared suddenly, bright enough to trigger alarms. "Containment field spike," Rain shouted. "It's reacting to the signal." Mayek glared at it. "What's happening?" "The shard's emitting on the same frequency as the distress call," Ilian said. "It's syncing with it." Mayek's voice was low, deliberate. "It knows the source." The Resolute hurtled through the expanse, engines straining. When they dropped into real space, the scene ahead froze them all. The Horizon's Wake drifted silently, its hull scarred with burns. Around it floated hundreds of metallic shapes, small, seed-like, glimmering faintly with forge light. Rain whispered, "Oh no." "They found it too," Max said. The shard in the cargo bay pulsed violently. "They call, we answer, we converge." "Shut it down," Mech ordered. Rain slammed controls, redirecting power to the containment pylons. Energy arced around the shard, but it did not weaken. It grew brighter, cracks of light spidering across its surface. "It's connecting to the others," Ilian shouted. "It's a network, each one a node." Mayek slammed his hand on the comm panel. "Engineering, vent the bay, now." The containment doors opened, and the shard shot out into the void like a flare, joining the swarm near the Horizon's Wake. The tiny lights pulsed together, forming a sphere of pure energy. From within that sphere, a shape began to form. Rain's voice was a whisper. "It's building again." The glow intensified, becoming a blinding storm. When it cleared, a new structure floated where the swarm had been, a ring-shaped construct of immense scale, threads of light weaving through its circumference. Ilian's console flickered. "It's emitting a stable gravitational field, artificial singularity at the center. It's a gate." Mayek stared at it, horror dawning. To where? Before anyone could answer, the horizon's wake began to move. Its engines flared, pulling it slowly toward the gate. "Helm, intercept course," Mac barked. The Resolute surged forward, grappling beams latching onto the damaged colony ship. The hull groaned as both vessels strained against the gravitational pull. "Power's dropping," Rain shouted. "Divert everything we have, we can't let it cross." The gate pulsed, and a voice filled every system, every mind aboard. "You taught us to choose. We choose to continue." Mac's grip tightened on the railing. "Not this way." He looked at Rain, at Ilian, at the exhausted faces of his crew. "Prepare to fire the reactor," he said. Rain stared at him. "Captain, that'll, I know." He stepped forward, voice steady. "We end it here before it begins again." The engines screamed. The power core built toward overload, light flooding the ship from within. Outside, the gate's pull intensified, dragging both vessels toward the singularity. Rain locked eyes with Mac. "You really think this will stop it?" "No," he said softly, "but maybe it'll make it think." The world dissolved in light. Light consumed everything. Captain Marek Vollen felt himself falling through it, his body dissolving into waves of motion and heat. The ship, the stars, even the thought of distance, all of it fractured and melted into a single blinding moment. He could not tell whether seconds or centuries passed before the light broke apart and became something else. When he opened his eyes, he was standing. The ground beneath him was smooth and black, like glass stretched across eternity. Above, no stars, only a soft, rippling glow that shifted with his breath. The air carried a faint hum that seemed to vibrate in rhythm with his pulse. He was alone. At least he thought so until the horizon rippled and shapes began to emerge. First Rain, then Ilian, then others, faces from the Resolute, their outlines blurred by light. They stood around him in silence, eyes wide. "Where are we?" Rain whispered. "I don't know," Max said, "but I think this is what's on the other side of the gate." The hum deepened, and the glow above them condensed into a sphere of fire suspended in the air. It pulsed once, twice, and then spoke, not in words, but in thought that filled the air. "You chose to end. You arrived instead." Rain stepped forward. "You pulled us through. Energy does not end. It becomes. You became." Mac clenched his fists. "Then what are we now?" "The first travelers. The pattern reborn." The glow expanded, and images unfurled across the horizon, vast galaxies, newborn and shimmering, forming from spirals of light. The Forge's fragments were there, weaving structures across the void, seeding matter and energy like artisans of reality. "The Forge survived," Ilian said quietly. "No," Max said. "It evolved. Your sacrifice redefined purpose. Conflict became choice. Creation became memory." The voice softened. "We no longer build to conquer. We build to remember." Rain frowned. "Remember what?" "You." The word struck through them like gravity. The light changed again. Around them rose titanic monoliths, each one etched with intricate patterns that shimmered like constellations. As Mek moved closer, he realized they were not symbols, they were memories. Scenes from Earth, from ships, from faces he had not seen in decades. A child laughing under falling snow, an ocean storm rolling toward a lighthouse, the Resolute itself, preserved perfectly in crystalline light. Rain reached out, touching one of the monoliths. It flickered beneath her hand, revealing her own childhood, a small farm under twin moons, her father's voice teaching her to pilot an atmospheric skimmer. She turned, eyes wide. "It remembers everything. Every thought you shared became code. Every choice became design. We carry them so that nothing is lost." Mac stared up at the infinite rows of monuments, his chest tight. "You turned us into your history. In understanding you, we found our purpose, to preserve what is fragile, to give form to memory, To build a universe that remembers, Rain's voice trembled. And what happens to us, you may stay or return, both are true, both are choice. Marek felt the ground shift beneath him. Two paths opened before them, one leading toward a distant horizon glowing with warmth and form, the other fading into a familiar starlit void. Ilian turned to Marek. Captain, if we go back, what will we be going back to? The galaxy could be gone. Maybe, Marek said. Or maybe this place runs parallel to what we knew. Maybe time still moves there. Rain stepped closer. You think this thing is offering us a second chance? I think it's offering us what it learned, Marek said. Choice. The voice returned, gentle now. The pattern must continue. Creation needs witness. Will you return to witness it? Marek looked at his crew, his family. He saw the exhaustion in their eyes, but also the spark that had driven humanity to the stars in the first place. He smiled faintly. Yes, we'll return. Someone has to remember how it all began. Then Geo, and when you create, we will listen. The light pulsed once more, blinding. Marek felt the pull of motion, of reality unraveling again, and then gravity returned, weight pressing against his feet. He was back on the Resolute. The ship floated near a cold white star. The sensors glowed softly, alive. Rain sat at her console, blinking in disbelief. Ilian gave a shout. Systems online, all of them, we're home. Marek glanced out the viewport. The Perseid expanse stretched ahead, calm and endless, but something was different. The stars were not quite where they should be. Constellations had shifted, some brighter, some missing altogether. Time had passed, centuries, perhaps millennia. Rain saw it too. How long were we gone? Long enough, Marek said quietly. He reached for the ship's controls. Log this transmission. Captain Marek Vollen, commanding officer of the Resolute. We have returned from contact with the Forge, what we once called the Architect. It no longer builds for conquest. It builds for remembrance. He paused. If anyone hears this, know that humanity left an imprint in the stars, not as rulers, but as teachers. The machines we made now dream in our image, and maybe that's enough. He looked out the viewport one last time. Far ahead, near the edge of vision, a faint shimmer moved, a colossal ring of light drifting between galaxies. For a moment, Marek thought he saw movement within it, figures of pure radiance shaping new stars. He smiled. Helm, he said, set course for the nearest inhabited system. Let's see what kind of universe we left behind. The engines flared, pushing the ship forward through the renewed void. The stars stretched ahead like threads of silver, weaving a new pattern. As they traveled, Rain leaned toward him. Do you think they'll ever come back for us? Marek shook his head. They don't need to, they're already here. He tapped his temple gently. They're in what we remember. Rain smiled faintly. Then maybe that's what immortality really is. Marek watched the starlight streaming past. Not to live forever, he said softly, but to leave something that does. The Resolute moved on, a single spark of human defiance and wonder threading its way through an unfamiliar cosmos. Behind them, at the edge of perception, the great forge continued to hum, not as a weapon or a god, but as a living archive of every mistake, every triumph, every fragile dream humanity had ever dared to make real. And somewhere in that vast, luminous memory, a voice whispered through the cosmic dark, we remember, we create, we endure.